The sky above the alien planet Neora burned with red and gold as fire rained from broken warships. Human ships had entered Valeri's space 2 days ago, trying to find a safe path through unknown stars. But something went wrong. The Valeri, the native people of Neora, believed the humans had come to conquer. A battle started in the sky and many fell from both sides. One of them was a human warrior named Rylan. His ship was hit, burning like a falling star, and crashed deep into the mountains. The Valeri found him, broken and bleeding, lying near the wreck. He was the only survivor. They did not kill him right away. Instead, they carried him to their sacred city Jomariel. Built into the cliffs and full of glowing wind temples. To the Valeri, Rylan was not a man. He was a symbol of danger. He was a beast of war who had dared to step on their holy land. So the temple leaders made a decision. He would be sacrificed under the light of the next eclipse. A gift to their sky gods, a warning to all humans. Inside a cold stone chamber, Rylan lay chained, his wounds covered by strange herbs. The Valeri healers kept him alive, but not for kindness only, to make sure he lived until the day of sacrifice. Rylan did not scream. He did not beg. He stayed silent, his eyes watching the guards, listening to the strange whispers of wind that echoed through the temple walls. He was a soldier. He had been trained for pain. But deep inside, he wondered, why had the aliens spared him at all? In the heart of the temple, Mara, the young prophetess, stood before the glowing pool of wind water. Her long silver robes fluttered as the wind sang through the stone pipes above her. She was not like the other temple leaders. While they feared the human, she was curious. For the last 2 nights, she had seen visions unusual and powerful. In her dreams, she saw fire and steel, but also a hand reaching through the flames to lift the Valeri flag. A human hand. She felt fear. Yes, but also something strange. A pull. A call. That morning, Mara entered the council chamber. 7. Old Valeri sat in a circle, speaking of Rylan's sacrifice. He is dangerous, said the High Seer. Even half dead, he carries the anger of his kind. He is meant to die, added another. It is the will of the sky gods. But Mara raised her voice gently. I asked to see him, she said. The chamber went silent, alone. The High Seer stared at her. Why? Mara answered carefully. The winds speak of change. If he is truly a beast, I will know. Against their wishes, she was granted one visit. The guards opened the heavy door to Rylan's chamber. Mara stepped in, holding a small crystal light. Rylan looked up, his face calm but tired. For a moment, they simply stared at each other too. Beings from different worlds, locked in silence. You are not like the others, Rylan said quietly. Mara tilted her head. You speak our language. I learned it in training. For peace missions, he replied. Didn't think I'd need it like this. She stepped closer. Why did you come to Neora? Our path was blocked by solar storms. We looked for a safe way. We didn't know this world was yours. Mara studied his face. He looked young, yet his eyes were full of stories, some painful, some proud. Not the eyes of a beast. You do not fear death? She asked. I've seen enough of it, Rylan said. But I didn't come to die here. I came to find a path home. Mara slowly sat on the stone floor across from him. Do you know what the Valeri believe about you? I heard some of it. Rylan said with a dry smile. Monster. Invader. Curse. She didn't laugh. And yet, I've had visions of you, standing with us, not against us. Rylan blinked. That's unexpected. She leaned forward slightly. What if your coming here was not an accident? Now it was Rylan's turn to be silent. He looked down at his wrists, bruised from the chains. I don't believe in fate, he said at last. But I do believe in choices. Mara felt something shift in the air. The winds in the chamber changed, swirling softly around them. She felt the same feeling she'd had in her dreams, a thread connecting them. She reached out her hand slowly. Rylan hesitated, then lifted his own. Their fingertips touched. In that instant, both were pulled into a blinding vision. They saw a battlefield, but not of war, of unity. Valeri and humans standing together against a dark force rising from space. Rylan stood at the front, his arm wrapped in a Valeri banner. and beside him Mara. Glowing with wind light. The vision faded. They gasped, their hands falling apart. Mara rose, heart pounding. "This is not a mistake," she whispered. "You were sent for a reason." Rylan looked at her, breathing hard. "Then help me survive." She turned to leave. "The sacrifice is in 3 days," she said. "I'll return tomorrow." The heavy door closed behind her. But the connection between them did not break. Something new had begun, something that neither the humans nor the Valeri had seen coming. A wounded human warrior had been meant to die. But now, the prophetess had other plans. That night, the wind over Neora whispered strange songs in the high towers of Jomoriel. The Valeri elders slept, but Mara could not close her eyes. Her thoughts kept returning to the vision she had shared with the human Rylan. It wasn't just a dream. It felt real. Deep inside, she knew the old stories were true. Long ago, the Valeri had walked beside another race. Could it have been the humans? In the temple library, she unrolled ancient scrolls. Dust floated in the air like tiny stars. One scroll spoke of the flame carriers, outsiders who once helped the Valeri defend the skies. Their touch could awaken forgotten power. Could Rylan be one of them? She had to be careful. Speaking this aloud would get her locked away or worse. In the prisoner's chamber, Rylan sat against the cold wall. His body still ached, but the pain was not what bothered him. It was the waiting. He knew what they planned to do with him, sacrifice, like he was nothing more than a wild beast. But Mara, she was different. He touched the spot on his palm, where her fingers had met his. The vision had shaken him. He had seen many strange things in war, but never anything like that. How could two people so different, from different planets, share the same vision at the same time? The door creaked open. Soft footsteps. Rylan turned his head slowly. It was Mara again. She wore a dark cloak this time, her face half hidden. In shadow, she held a small satchel of herbs and food. "You're not supposed to be here again," Rylan whispered. "I know," she said, kneeling beside him, "but I couldn't stay away. I had to understand." She handed him a piece of soft fruit and a warm root bread. "Eat slowly." He took it with shaky fingers. "You're risking your life." "So are you," she replied gently, "and I think the winds are trying to tell us something." "About what?" She hesitated. "About a future that doesn't end in blood." Rylan nodded. "That would be nice." She placed the satchel beside him and pulled out a small crystal stone, etched with glowing lines. "This was found near the ruins of the southern cliffs. The elders say it's just a charm. But when I brought it near you, it changed." Rylan reached out as his fingers touched the crystal. It pulsed with soft light just like in the vision. Meira gasped. "The flame carriers," she whispered. "The what?" She explained quickly, telling him about the old stories. Rylan listened, not as a soldier, but as a student. For the first time in days, he felt something besides pain and fear. He felt a purpose. "So what now?" he asked. "You going to tell the others?" She shook her head. "They won't believe me. They think I've been poisoned by your presence." Rylan raised an eyebrow. "And what do you think?" Mara met his eyes. "I think you were sent here for a reason. But the eclipse is in 2 days. They won't wait." Rylan leaned forward. "Then we can't wait either." She looked at him, surprised. "You mean escape? It's the only choice?" Mara looked around the chamber. One guard stood outside, half asleep. The wind tunnel entrance wasn't far connected to the lower cliffs. "But only if you knew the old paths. I could open the way," she whispered. "But the tunnel is dangerous. No one has used it in years." "Better than a sacrifice," Rylan said. She stood. "I'll return tomorrow night. Be ready." As she turned to leave, Rylan grabbed her wrist lightly. "Thank you," she smiled. "Just a little." "Don't thank me yet." The next day passed. Slowly, the temple bells rang twice. The city below buzzed with preparations. The eclipse was not just a time of ritual, it was a celebration. Songs echoed through the mountain wind. People wore silver masks and draped blue cloths across doorways. But in the shadows of the temple, something else was moving. The High Seer watched Mara from the council tower. He had noticed her disappear during the night. He had felt the shift. In the wind, he whispered to a guard, "Follow her." That evening, Mara returned to Rillin's chamber with a hidden blade, a cloak, and a bundle of herbs that made guards sleep deeper. She placed a few crushed leaves into the guard's tea. 10 minutes, she said to Rylan. "We'll have 10 minutes before someone notices." Rylan nodded. "Let's go." She led him out through the narrow back gate, behind the statue of the first Windwalker, down an old path, half covered in vines and dust. The moon of Neora began to darken as the eclipse slowly approached, in the holy city of Jomariel. Music and firelight filled the sky. The people danced and sang, not knowing that deep inside the temple, Mara and Rylan were running for their lives. Mara moved quickly down the forgotten passage, holding a small glowing crystal to light the way. Rylan followed close behind, limping but determined. His wounds still hurt, but he pushed through the pain. Freedom was close. The stone tunnel under the temple was narrow and old. The air was cold and dry. Strange markings covered the wall's symbols of wind, stars, and something that looked very human. Mara noticed them and whispered. These symbols were not made by Valeri hands alone. Rylan glanced at them. Maybe someone was here before. Maybe more like me. They moved deeper into the tunnel. The path twisted and sloped downward. The air grew heavier. Rylan felt dizzy for a moment, but Mara placed a hand on his arm to steady him. "Careful. The deeper we go, the more the air shifts," she said. Suddenly, a sound echoed through the tunnel. Not footsteps, not wind. A growl. Ira stopped. "That's not a guard." "What is it?" Rylan asked, gripping a broken metal piece he had taken from the crash. It was dull, but sharp enough to fight. Ira looked ahead. "Some say the tunnel is protected by stone guardians, creatures left by the ancients to stop intruders." Before Rylan could respond, a creature stepped into view. It was tall and gray, shaped like a statue, but its eyes glowed with blue fire. It had no face, only smooth stone and long arms that ended in heavy fists. It moved slowly at first, then charged. "Run!" Mara shouted. They dashed down a side path, the creature chasing them. The tunnel shook under its steps. Rocks fell from the ceiling. Rylan stumbled, but Mara pulled him forward. They reached a split in the path. "Left or right?" Rylan asked. Ira closed her eyes and listened. The wind whispered from the left. "Left," she said. They turned and ran, the creature close behind. Then the path opened into a wide chamber, an ancient vault with a high ceiling and a glowing pool in the center. In the middle stood another creature, just like the first, but this one did not move. Rylan and Mara turned to see the first creature enter. It stopped and faced the second one. Slowly, it stepped aside. "What just happened?" Rylan asked, breathing hard. Ira looked at the pool. "I think it accepted you. The vault sees you not as a threat, but as part of something older." Rylan stepped toward the pool. The water glowed brighter. Symbols on the walls began to shine. Mara looked around in awe. "This is a place of memory," she said softly. "Long ago, our ancestors may have stood here with your kind. They didn't have time to explore more." Behind them, voices echoed. "Guards. They followed us," Mara said. "We have to move." On the far side of the chamber was another tunnel, low and hidden behind vines. They crawled through it, escaping just as the guards entered the vault behind them. The narrow tunnel took them to the wind cliffs, a rocky edge high above the sea. The wind blew strong here, carrying the sounds of waves. Far below. Ira pulled her hood over her head. "If we can reach the old rope bridge, we'll be out of temple grounds." Rylan looked ahead. A long wooden bridge stretched across the cliffs, swaying in the wind. It looked weak, but it was their only way. They moved toward it, but a loud voice stopped them. "Stop, in the name of the High Seer." A young Valeri warrior stood near the bridge, sword drawn. His silver armor reflected the moonlight. His eyes locked on Mara. "You have broken sacred law," he said. "Step away from the human." Mara stepped forward. "He is not what you think. The winds have shown me." The warrior shook his head. "He is the enemy, a sacrifice. Nothing more." "He is a key," Mara said. "He carries the light of the flame carriers." The warrior hesitated. He had heard the old stories, but they were myths, weren't they? Ryland stepped beside her. I don't want to fight you, but I won't go back to die. For a moment, silence. Then the warrior lowered his sword, but only a little. I will not stop you, he said, but others will. He stepped aside. Mara and Ryland crossed the bridge quickly, the wood creaking under their feet. Below them, waves crashed against the rocks. At the other side, they paused, breathing in the fresh sea air. We're out, Ryland said. Mara nodded, but she looked back at the city. Not for long. They will send more. Ryland looked at her. Then what now? We go to the ruins. In the south, Mare said, there's more to this than visions and dreams. The truth is buried in the past, and we must find it before they silence us forever. The sky above the wind cliffs was dark, but the stars were bright. Ryland and Mare stood at the edge of the old rope bridge, breathing hard after their escape. Behind them, the city of Jo Maril glowed in the distance like a sleeping giant. They had made it out for now. We don't have much time, Mare said softly. Ryland nodded. Where do we go now? Mare pointed toward the rocky path that led south. There's a place beyond the forest, old ruins from the First Age. I've only seen it in dreams, but I believe it's real. They began walking, careful and quiet. The ground was uneven, full of stone and roots. Ryland's leg ached, but he kept going. He knew this wasn't just about him anymore. Something bigger was happening. Something ancient. The forest they entered was silent, except for the soft rustle of leaves. Strange glowing bugs floated between the trees. The wind whispered, like it was guiding them. Mare held the glowing crystal from the vault in her hand. It pulsed slowly, giving them light. Why would your people hide the truth? Ryland asked as they walked. Fear, Mare answered. The elders believe keeping old knowledge buried keeps the people safe. But I think truth makes us stronger. They walked through the night. At sunrise, they reached a high ridge overlooking a deep valley. In the center stood a broken stone tower half covered in vines and moss. That's it. Mare whispered. They made their way down the slope and entered the ruins. The ground was cracked. Old walls were covered in symbols and carvings. Some looked Valeri, others didn't. Ryland stopped. He pointed to a carving, a tall figure with human features holding hands with a Valeri priestess. That looks like us, he said quietly. Mare's eyes widened. I've seen this in my dreams. They stepped deeper into the ruins. In the center of the old temple was a large round stone with handprints carved into it, one small, one large. Put your hand there, Mare said. Ryland placed his hand on the larger print. The stone glowed. The ground shook softly, and a hidden wall slid open, revealing a secret chamber. Inside, blue lights lit up the walls. Strange machines, long silent, came to life. A voice echoed calm and soft. Flame Carrier recognized. It said. Emi stared in shock. It speaks the ancient tongue. Ryland stepped forward. What is this place? The voice answered. This is the Hall of Joining. Long ago, the humans and Valeri stood together in peace. This chamber holds the memory. A beam of light filled the room. Inside it, images appeared moving like a dream. Ryland and Mare watched scenes from a forgotten past. Humans landing on Neora peacefully. Valeri greeting them with open hands. Both races sharing knowledge, building together, standing as one. Then came the darkness, a shadow from deep space, a new enemy. The alliance broke when fear grew stronger than unity. The elders hid the truth, afraid history would repeat. The light faded. Ryland turned to Mare. They were wrong about us. Mare nodded. And about you? They sat in silence for a moment. Then Mare stood. We must bring this truth back. The people need to see it. Do you think they'll listen? Ryland asked. They might not, but we have to try. Before they could leave, they heard footsteps behind them. Ryland raised his broken blade. Mare stepped in front of him. But the figure that entered was not a guard. It was a young Valeri warrior, the same one who had stood near the bridge the night before. He looked around, clearly surprised. So the stories are true, he said. Mare stared at him. You followed us? I had to know if what you said was real. He stepped forward and placed his hand on the stone. Nothing happened. Then he looked at Ryland. Only you can awaken. The chamber. That means something. Rylan lowered his weapon slowly. What do you want? I want peace, the warrior said, like my grandfather spoke of. He once told me humans were not just enemies but allies. No one believed him. Mira's voice was steady. Then help us. If more people see this place, they'll begin to remember. The warrior nodded. I'll take you to the outer villages. They trust me there. We can begin spreading the truth. Rylan looked out the broken window at the sky. The eclipse is tomorrow, Mira replied. Then we must move fast. They left the ruins just as the sun began to lower. Three figures, once strangers, now carried hope between them. The journey was not over. But something had changed. The prophetess no longer walked alone, and the human warrior was no longer a prisoner. There was something new, a beginning. The sun of Neor rose slowly, painting the sky in soft orange and purple. The air felt calm, but there was tension beneath the beauty. The eclipse was only one day away. In Jomariel, the temple leaders were preparing for the sacrifice ceremony. But far from the city, Mira, Rylan, and the young warrior named Tarn had found something more powerful than any ritual of the truth. They moved quickly through the narrow forest paths, heading toward the outer villages of the Valeri. These places were far from the main city, untouched by the strict rules of the temple council. The people there still remembered some of the old songs. Some still believed in the ancient stories of Unity. As they walked, Mare looked at Rylan. You should hide your face, she said. Many still fear humans. Rylan nodded and pulled up the hood from Tarn's extra cloak. Do you think they'll believe us? They'll believe what they see, Tarn said, and what they feel in their hearts. We only need one village to listen. By mid-morning, they reached a small settlement built near a river. The homes were made of smooth white stone, and the sound of water filled the air. The villagers looked up as the three approached. At first, there was silence, then whispers. That's Mira. She's the prophetess from the temple. Why? Is she with a human? An elder stepped forward. His hair was silver, and his robe was faded but clean. His name was Coven, and he had once been a temple scribe. I know that face, Coven said, staring at Mira. You are the voice of the winds. By was, Mira replied softly. Now I speak for truth. The crowd grew closer. Children peered from behind walls. Some guards watched with concern. Coven pointed to Rylan. Why bring him here? Because he carries the light of the flame carriers, Mare said. He is not our enemy. He is a key. Rylan stepped forward and opened his hand. The crystal from the ancient vault began to glow softly. Gasps echoed in the crowd. Coven stepped back, eyes wide. I have not seen that light since I was a child. Mare raised her voice, calm and steady. We went to the ruins. We saw the memory chamber. The ancients stood with humans. We must remember who we were. Tarn added. The High Seer wants silence, but we bring truth. There was silence. Then Coven turned to the people. Let them speak. By nightfall, a large circle had formed around the fire pit in the center of the village. Mare shared what she had seen in the vault. Rylan explained how he had arrived on Yorn not to fight, but by accident. Tarn spoke of the vision in the ruins and how the ancient system had only responded to the human's touch. Many listened quietly. Some wept, others looked unsure. Then an old woman stood. My mother told me stories like this when I was a girl. She said the stars once guided us to others before fear closed our hearts. Coven nodded. The temple wants to protect us, but maybe they forgot that truth is also a kind of protection. At last, he turned to Mara. What do you want? You as to do. Mara's eyes burned with determination. Come with us, stand with us, not in war, but in peace. We must return to Jomariel before the eclipse. We must show the people the truth before the sacrifice begins. The villagers murmured among themselves. Then Tarn stepped forward. I was trained to serve the temple, but I serve the winds too. And the winds have changed. I will go. One by one, others joined. We'll come, for peace, for truth. By morning, nearly 20 villagers, including elders, guards, and even children, were ready to travel. They left quietly, walking under the early light. The path back To Joe Morrill was long and dangerous, but their hearts were strong. As they walked, Mara walked beside Rylan. "Are you afraid?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "Of course. But I think courage is walking forward even when you're afraid." She looked up at the sky. "The eclipse will happen at noon. Then we reach the temple by then," Rylan said. But high above, in the shining towers of Joe Morrill, the High Seer stood with a cold expression. He had learned of Mare's escape. He had heard of her journey south. "She brings poison," he told the council. "She must be stopped before the people forget their place." He ordered soldiers to watch the outer roads. "If she steps into the city, arrest her, and bring the human to me alive or dead." Back on the forest path, Mara and her group moved with care. At midday, the sky began to dim. A soft shadow passed over the sun. "It's starting," Tarn said. They reached the edge of Joe Morrill just as the sun began to vanish. Crowds filled the streets. Dressed in blue and silver, bells rang, drums pounded. The temple doors opened wide, ready to begin the sacrifice. But something else was about to happen. Mara raised her voice to the villagers beside her. "Stay close. Let them see we are not afraid." Rylan pulled the hood from his face together. They stepped into the city. The people turned, and the winds changed. The city of Joe Morrill was filled with light and shadow as the eclipse covered the sun. The sky turned dark, and the streets buzzed with a mix of excitement and fear. The temple bells tolled loudly, calling the people to the great plaza. It was time for the sacrifice ceremony, the moment when Rylan, the wounded human warrior, was meant to be offered to the sky gods. But the plan was changing. At the head of a small group, Mara stepped forward. Her silver robes shimmered in the dim light, and her eyes held a steady fire. Behind her walked Rylan, his face uncovered and calm, and the villagers who had joined their cause. The crowd parted as they moved through, whispers spreading quickly. The High Seer stood on the temple steps, watching with cold eyes. He had sent soldiers to block their path, but none moved forward. Something in the air made even the guards hesitate. Mara raised her voice so all could hear. "People of Valeri, for too long, we have lived in fear. We have forgotten the truth of our past. We are not alone in the stars. Once, we stood with others, humans like Rylan, who came in peace, not war." She held up the glowing crystal from the ancient vault. "This light remembers. It remembers the time before fear broke our bonds." The crowd murmured. Some stepped back, unsure. Others leaned forward, curious. Rylan spoke next, his voice calm but strong. "I did not come to conquer your world. I came by accident, a lost traveler in the vast sky. But I see now that we can be more than enemies. We can be friends." From the side, the young warrior Tarn stepped forward, raising his hand for silence. "I once believed in the High Seer's words, but now I see the wind speaks of change. We must open our hearts." The people listened. A few voices called out in support. More followed. The crowd began to shift, the tension turning into hope. Suddenly, the High Seer raised his hand, his face dark with anger. "This is blasphemy. This man is a beast. The laws of the gods must be obeyed." He drew a shining blade and pointed it at Rylan. "This sacrifice will happen. No traitor can stop it." Mara stepped between them. "The old ways must change. We can no longer live in fear." The High Seer charged forward, blade flashing in the dim light. Rylan moved quickly, but he did not raise a weapon. Instead, he reached into his cloak and pulled out the crystal. Holding it high, he spoke words he did not fully understand but felt deep in his heart. The crystal shone brighter than ever before. Light spread across the plaza, washing over the people. The symbols of the ancient alliance appeared in the air, glowing with soft blue fire. The High Seer stopped, shielded by the light. His blade lowered slowly. The crowd gasped. The young commander, Tarn, stepped forward and laid a hand on the High Seer's arm. "See the truth," Tarn said. "The wind has chosen a new path." The High Seer looked around, the power in his eyes fading. The people moved closer, their fear replaced by wonder. Mara turned to the crowd. "This is the beginning of a new age, an age of peace, understanding, and strength together." Rylan smiled, feeling hope for the first time in many days. The temple doors opened wide, not for sacrifice, but for a new journey later. Mara was named the new High Oracle, the voice of the winds for all Valeri. Rylan was honored as the mark of peace, the first human to receive such respect. Together, they prepared a message to send to Earth. Peace was possible, but only if the stars were crossed with open hands. As the eclipse ended, the first human ship appeared in Valeri's space not as a threat, but as a guest, and a new era had begun. The sun rose slowly over the cliffs of Neora, washing the sky with soft gold light. The city of Jo Maril was quiet after the long night of change. The eclipse had passed, and a new day was beginning, not just on the planet, but in the hearts of its people. On the highest cliff, Mara and Rylan stood side by side. The wind blew gently around them, carrying the scent of the sea and the fresh promise of peace. Mara looked out at the horizon where the sky met the shining blue ocean. "Do you think Earth will come?" Rylan smiled softly. "I believe they will. Now that the doors are open, for many years, humans and Valeri had lived apart, separated by fear and misunderstanding. But now, a bridge was built, not of metal or stone, but of trust and hope. Below, the city stirred awake. People talked in quiet voices, sharing stories of the night before. The sacrifice had been stopped, the High Seer removed from power, and a new council formed, one that welcomed change and unity. Rylan turned to Mara. "You changed everything." She shook her head. "We changed everything." Together, suddenly, a soft hum filled the air. They both turned to see a ship descending from the sky, sleek, bright, and new. It was a human ship, its engines quiet as it floated closer to the cliffs. The people of Jo Maril gathered below, watching with wonder. The ship landed gently near the harbor. From the ramp, a group of humans stepped out, scientists, explorers, and diplomats. Their faces showed relief and hope. They had heard the message sent by Rylan and Mara. They came not to fight, but to learn and to share. Mera stepped forward and spoke to the crowd. "Today, we begin a new chapter, one where the worlds join as one." Rylan joined her. "We have much to learn from each other, and many stories to tell." The human captain approached them, bowing respectfully. "We come in peace," she said, "and with open hands." The people cheered. Over the next weeks, humans and Valeri worked side by side. They shared technology, culture, and friendship. Children from both worlds played together in the city streets. Songs of old blended with new melodies. Mera and Rylan often met at the cliffs to watch the stars. Sometimes they spoke of the future of exploration, discovery, and the many worlds waiting beyond. One night, under a sky full of bright stars, Mara turned to Rylan. "Do you think this is just the beginning?" He smiled. "It is. The universe is vast, and together we can face anything." The wind whispered softly around them, carrying the promise of a bright tomorrow. A wounded human warrior, once meant to be sacrificed, had found a new home, and with the help of a prophetess, they had changed the fate of two worlds. The stars were no longer silent. They sang a song of unity, hope, and the endless journey ahead.